Let's dance. Welcome to our review, Michael Edelson, of the life of John Peel and his autobiography/biography entitled Margrave of the Marshes. I say autobiography/biography because John Peel unfortunately died halfway through writing his book, only to be finished by his beloved wife, Sheila. If you haven't been reading my blogs, then you most likely don't know who this remarkable man is. John Peel was a famous DJ from England who, over the course of his life, revolutionized rock history by debuting bands like The Cure, David Bowie, The White Stripes, and more on Radio London, BBC's Radio 1, and Radio 4. John captures each moment of his life with great detail through his climb in the music business. Overall, I found this book personally to be a delight to anyone who appreciates music in his witty humor, change in writing style, and his overall detail and his joy of music, among other things. Throughout the first part of this book, John Peel writes his life as if he were talking to his closest friends. His nonchalant writing styles make you comfortable with his story and literally causes you to laugh out loud with his unusual life. After his unfortunate death, the change in writing style isn't immense, but enough to keep on reading with his new breath of fresh air. The only problem, if you can call it that, is that every once in a while both John and his wife go on a tangent unrelated to the chronological event they were both in the process of telling. Though this is frustrating to read on occasion, these stories were amusing on their own, and one always knew that they were going to return to the main story that they were left off on. With these similar writing styles, John and his wife both successfully captured the essence of Peel and how he approached each and every situation he put during his life. Though this book really didn't have one designated theme, I believe John and his wife had points in which they wanted the reader to think about life in the broader scheme of things. Throughout the book, readers can sense a feeling of freedom in the way Peel lives his life, giving a sort of sensation that one should live their own life to the fullest. John gives this idea with events within the book, such as when he and his wife were told not to talk to the locals in the USSR on their trip to Bureau Radio 1. Ignoring this, John and Sheila gained new friends who showed them around Russia that they wouldn't have been able to achieve if they hadn't jumped at the opportunity. Another point lying underneath the text, I believe, is that John and Sheila successfully projected that you should stay true to yourself, no matter what. But John and his wife excrete this view by simply describing themselves with other people, such as with John being around countless amounts of rock bands that drank and did multiple drugs, and yet he still kept his belief in always being sober. Or when Sheila would not give up John even though her parents thought of him as a dishonor or even an embarrassment at first because she loved him for who he was. In general, John and Sheila did have important points, successfully express them through describing their own life and their use of tone. I felt while reading this book the author at times lacked diversity in their tone. Majority of the time it stayed as sort of a nonchalant tone, like a normal conversation. However the case, when it did change, it was definitely apparent, creating a sort of euphoria and this whole new feeling within the book. If this was on purpose or not, I'll never know. I noticed that Peel and his wife most often and most effectively used diction and sentence structure to cause these minute changes in tone. Within these minuscule changes in tone, both authors open up their literary talents and delve deep into literary devices, most hyperboles, oxymorons, and puns, giving these tiny changes immense value to greater make apparent to the major points within John's life. I feel this usage of tone and literary devices is somewhat genius in that it makes the small changes huge with little effort. This is one of my favorite aspects of the writing style. In general, I felt that Peel and his wife basically told every aspect of John's life. I believe, however, anything that was missed in the retelling of John's life is just the fact that he died, which is completely understandable. I felt, on the other hand, that most of my favorite parts could have been lost to this, causing me personally to be deeply saddened. Though this might be the case, I disliked the fact that on occasion not only would the author go on a different story about John in his chronological order, but express knowledge that had almost zero relevancy to his story. At one point, John Peel starts to talk about the life of an artist he barely knows personally. It was kind of ridiculous. Though this is the case, his randomness was made up of the clever humor and, quote, behind-the-scenes, unquote, life of music. Those are my absolute favorite aspects of the book. Overall, I personally believe this to be an excellent book. I pretty much loved it from beginning to end with its humor, accents and tone, annoying but unique randomness, and just the subject in general. Learning about this band truly gave me a bigger picture on life, and I'm extremely glad that I read this book. I would definitely recommend this book to anyone, even if they aren't a music fanatic, but it definitely helps. I hope you enjoyed our little adventure through John's life, and as always, have an awesome day, and rock on!